what it is now with 125 school districts. Next slide. But if we had school districts by town, for example, which is more comparable to almost every other place in the country, some places even have school districts by county, etc. What do you see? You see that in fact we have the little rainbow in there. We have some blue, we have some red, some yellow, some green. We don't have the same population levels across all of the different racial groups. And we don't have to have the same population levels. But if we're talking about equity, we could be having students that are in the same schools, getting the same curriculum, having the same resources, etc., etc. And the way that we have it right now is really shaped by structural racism. Next slide. So what does structural racism look like on Long Island? This is a simple diagram. We could have a very complex diagram. But just simply looking at housing and education, for example, I can tell you that we do not have an aggressive, systematic, fair housing enforcement, which, and it's a shame that we have to depend on little nonprofits like us to bring people to court to deal with this. And it's only going to be a couple of those that we get to do. We don't have the resources to actually to do this in an aggressive manner. But if you don't have that, you're going to end up really sustaining the residential segregation. We know we had it historically because of Levittown and how it kept people from that wealth development for so long with the continued policies of the real estate industry and the banking industry, etc. But today, we are continuing that residential segregation, and also that it's supported by the government fragmentation that I showed you. It is so difficult when everybody says, not me, not me. You know, it must have been the other guy that's responsible. And then the government fragmentation ensures this sort of unequal access to a variety of benefits and resources, including education. And we know that your education has a big impact on what's happening with your economic, trajectory. And then that fuels the sort of concentrated poverty, which is kept in place by the lack of fair housing enforcement. So in closing, next slide, how do we change this reality? And I hope we have some time to talk about during questions, etc. There are two things. One is we really have to deal with interrupting the racialized marginalization and segregation and discrimination. And we have to create structural inclusion. And so it's not enough to just work around the edges, which is sometimes what people do. They say, keep everything in place. Nothing changes structurally. Keep all of that, Oyster Bay says, let's just keep it the way it is. Let's not have people have an opportunity to come here if they want to. And then maybe we'll do, we'll have a little program or we'll have a something or other where people say, oh yeah, we'd like to help you in some way. And so I just want to give you that to chew on a little bit. Sometimes what gets attention is the word that somebody says, and we don't want people to be called racially insensitive terms under any situation. However, sometimes we just pay attention to that and we don't pay attention to these underlying issues which are really having a big impact on us. So, thank you very much.
Okay, so as I said, a lot of these issues are going to be issues that impact us. And so when you think of situations, this girl made a very specific point in reference to structural, right? That it's not just individual, what prejudice I may hold or you may hold. We have to recognize there's a paradigm, a way of thinking about it, that our prejudice, when you add power to that, so power that comes from a system, being a hiring manager and seeing a resume with an ethnic last name possibly, and maybe putting that to the side or giving it a different consideration than a different last name. So those kinds of things we have to look at when our prejudices are coupled with power, that creates some type of ism, in this case racism, structural racism in the context of these broader structures. So we want to be able to look at some of these issues where we see these inequalities. So we're going to move to some of the very specific issues. We have the framework though. Does everybody have the framework? Everyone feel comfortable in the framework of inequity and how these issues impact our communities on an economic level, in our housing systems, in aspects of our education? When you think of the pathways that we create for ourselves or for our children and families to be able to thrive. You know, many of us are in situations where we just kind of keeping it going. Have you ever had a day where you just said, look, I'm just trying to keep my head above water? Right, had a moment in your life where you're just recognizing that the issues of life are just on you in kind of a heavy way and you have to just kind of keep it pushing, right? So we do that, but we want to be able to not just do that. We want to be able to press, but we also want to be able to strive. And as we strive, we want to be able to thrive. So we do want to move the conversation from some of the issues to solutions, and we will in a moment, more specifically when we have some more dialogue. But are you thinking at least of some questions? You got some things on your heart or on your mind that you want to be able to bring to our dialogue? Okay, I'm counting on it. So I'm going to ask now that William Moss would come, the founder of Black Long Island, that Facebook group that has done a tremendous job with regard to some economic development, but also education and whatever issues you're going to speak to. We'll appreciate that. Then after that, I'll ask that our Commissioner of the Health Department, Dr. Eisenstein, will join after that.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Again, my name is William King Moss III, and I am an educator by trade. I'm also the grandson of a pastor, the late Dr. Mary Robinson, who pastored in the Pentecostal Assembly of the World for 34 years. So I know service very well, and what it means to serve humankind. And I can tell you unequivocally that school suspensions do not serve humankind. There is a commodity that we work with in education. Every industry has its commodity that it looks at and focuses on, right? So in education, we look at instructional time. The time that the student, right, spends with the teacher. That's our commodity. So a good educator wants to protect instructional time, because if students aren't with teachers, they can't learn. So we have an institution in public education where we discipline students by removing them from their instructional time. And then we wonder why. Why are there so many school shootings? Why are students going online and downloading how to kill each other and how to come in and blow the school up? How's that happening? Why is that happening? Why is it so different from 50 years ago? Well, our society has changed dramatically from 50 years ago, right? Where mom was at home, and when Bobby did something in school and the suspension came through, Bobby went home to hell, not to heaven. Today, Bobby goes home to heaven because mommy's at work. So 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and 14-year-old Bobby or Betty, who did something wrong at school, are now sitting at home because mom nobody here can afford to take 5 days off because Bobby or Betty got into a fight. So Bobby or Betty is at home. They're on the internet, they're on their cell phones, and some of you don't know they borrowed their friend's cell phone, so the cell phone you took away is not the cell phone they're on.
Right.
Okay? When you're not home, when they're at home. So if we were going to create a disciplinary system in public education today, I can guarantee you we would not create suspensions as an answer to how to discipline our students who are having trouble. We wouldn't create it today. We wouldn't create it because our taxes, we're strained with our taxes paying for public education, so why would we waste our money and pay for a teacher who's not teaching the kid? Kid is not in the seat, he's at home. Would we waste our money like that? No. And then the law says, well, you sent the kid home, so now you have to hire a tutor to go to his house, okay, to tutor him for the lessons that he's missing at the school. So now we're paying double for the institution. Does any of this make sense? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense at all. But we're still doing it. And the sad part about it for African Americans is that it affects us double. At first it was just our boys. Now it's our girls who are being suspended at double the rates of their counterparts, their white counterparts. So as an institution, as a policy, suspensions has to go. It simply has to go. Now, fortunate for myself, I wrote a grant. President Obama pushed through My Brother's Keeper legislation to try to address some of these issues, because structurally, people are very comfortable where they are and they don't want to change. So he put some money into the situation because at least that will give some spark to something. So now I applied for a grant, and this grant's going across all New York, to solve this issue of the over-suspension of boys of color. So I wrote this grant, and one of the things I put into the grant was a solution that I call silos. Seminars in lieu of suspensions. And the way that I structure silos here in Nassau County in the Lawrence School District is that at the brink or the cusp where the young man or young woman is going to be suspended, they already did something that's a suspendable offense in the school, there's a pause. Now we're supposed to be in touch with mom and dad. That's a whole other issue. Don't get me started with our young people who are suspended and the administrator never even called home. Don't get me started about that. No, let's not talk about that. It's a whole issue of respect, which is a whole issue with race in and of itself. But the administrator is supposed to call home by law and talk to the parent before the suspension. It's supposed to be a suspension interview with the parent before that suspension even takes place. So in that interim, when the discussion is supposed to happen with the parent, there's an injection of an offer for the parent to choose to go to a seminar in lieu of the suspension. What this does is humanizes the whole situation. So instead of this being some punitive, dehumanizing, and quite frankly, risky experience for everybody, sending a young person home, minor home, who will likely be unsupervised, right? And who's losing their education. We have a different option. For non-tremendously violent, non-drugs, illegal situations, then they get this offer. And this is way better than the I hate to say incarceration, but there's an over guilt that gets prescribed to black people. So it's a way better option. And so the parent has an option to step in and quite frankly be the hero for their child their son or daughter so that they do not have to incur a suspension on their record. They do not have to stay at home by themselves unsupervised. Who knows what idle hands will get into. And on top of the getting rid of the negatives, we have sustained the positives, right? The instructional time is maintained. The young man or woman goes to a seminar where there is a caring and knowledgeable teacher sitting with him or her parent discussing what happened and how things can be done differently. Total different experience than just being sent home for 5 days to simmer about the situation, boil, and then come to school and do it again. Okay? So, when we talk about structural issues, the suspension is a law. The school's allowed to do it. So we have a lot of structural things that need to change in New York State, across the country, and certainly here in Nassau County. But I want you to know that in Nassau County, you have a Shining Light program in the Lawrence School District, that if anybody wants to take it to their school district, I'm an open book, okay? And you can take the program, and it's a very inexpensive program. It's not even that costly, school board president. Where are you at? It's not even that costly when you really look at how much money you're spending on the home tutor, or home teaching, or whatever.
We don't do that anymore.
Oh, you don't do that anymore? You don't suspend students anymore?
They're suspended, but they go to another part of the district where they have instructional and clinical and counseling.
Oh, that's awesome, awesome. So you're already great. You're already great. Yes.
Kids get to the other part of the district.
Yeah. So that's good. But I'm still saving you money. I'll show you how. No, because it really balances out. So to wrap it up, that program is available, but we all need to be thinking about how we can change the structures in our schools as well as in our government so that African Americans can have an equal playing field across the board. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. I am Dr. Larry Eisenstein. I'm your Commissioner of Health in Nassau County. This is not my first time here in the Elmont Library. I presented at this same event a couple of years ago. And this library is amazing. Just always thank you. Thank the legislator for hosting this. Thank Assemblywoman Solages for being a great representative in Albany. And I just got back from Albany Thursday doing advocacy for local public health. And it really, one of the great challenges is New York is very often seen as New York City and the counties north of New York City, which are for the most part agricultural. And Long Island really is a unique entity, and our needs are specific. So I want to thank the Assemblywoman for always being there to advocate for us. So let me quickly begin. I talked about some of our programs a couple of years ago, but I'm going to begin with two things of good news that have happened since the last time we held this meeting a couple of years ago. Number one, Nassau County Department of Health, your health department, and while there are all these governmental entities, which makes being a health commissioner very challenging because the interactions are limitless and endless, there's only one health department in Nassau County. And so your health department has achieved, since we last met, public health accreditation, which is a new national standard. There were 127 domains that we had to prove. We are the first and still only large suburban health department in the whole northeastern United States to achieve this. It took years to accomplish. About 5 years was the whole process. And a lot of the domains focus on what we're doing to achieve health equity and health equality, to address health disparities, which we acknowledge exist. And so we're very proud of that. Second piece of good news, before we get to the not so good news, is last year, and this has happened to me every single time I speak. The TV cameras are there, and then just as I'm about to say this, they go away. The Nassau County Department of Health in 2018 was named Health Department of the Year, Local Health Department of the Year for the whole country, out of 3,000 health departments. Thank you. And I don't tell you this to pat myself on the back, oh, it feels good to say it, but the fact is we win these acknowledgments because of the services that we provide. Now, for the not as good news. We have all of these services, but getting the public, especially the communities that most need the services, to know about it or to engage in them can be very challenging. And so that's one of the things that we focus on. I'm very proud that we launched a few years back an Office of Minority Health. Our director of the Office of Minority Health, who spoke last time, Dr. Carolyn McCummings, was taken from me to become the Commissioner of Human Services in Nassau County. So now she is Commissioner McCummings and my colleague. And I'm happy to say we've done an extensive search, and we have a candidate who I think is going to be great bringing this office forward. It's vital that we have this office because in public health, local health departments, the way it's structured in government, are essentially an administrative branch of the state health department. We carry out the state health department's function. It's state law that we inspect restaurants. So we inspect restaurants. It's state law that we test the water supply, so we test the water supply. When it comes to health disparities and health equity, there's nothing specifically written in the law. So I'm very proud that we're able to do this above and beyond what our mandates are, which is not an easy thing to do during tough fiscal times, which, as you all know, Nassau County government has been under for an extended period of time. We do have great services. Access to them and to health care is one of the challenges that we see as public health officials. So for example, we have 10 world-class hospitals in Nassau County. Nassau County is only about 450 square miles. There are whole states that don't have 10 hospitals as large as our 10 hospitals. We have over 8,000 licensed physicians practicing in Nassau County. The ratio of physicians to the population is very high here. Yet, despite the fact that we have all these doctors, plus all the nurses and PAs and NPs and therapists and other healthcare providers, and we have all these hospitals, every day I'm faced with people who have access to healthcare difficulties. Public transportation, if you're going from one Long Island Railroad station, east or west to another, is great. It's a little more challenging to get to healthcare if you're a doctor and you are not right on one of those stations. We understand transportation is a challenge. So public health acknowledges the social determinants of health, socioeconomics, transportation, housing, safe housing, environment, clean air, clean water as challenges. We continue to have very high outcomes, health outcomes in New York. Every year the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and the University of Wisconsin release a report that ranks every county in the country by health. And they don't compare you to other states, they compare you within the state. And every year, Nassau is one of the 3 or 4 healthiest counties in the state. In various categories, we're number 1, and others we're a little bit lower. There's about 58 counties in the state. We're never out of the top 3 or 4 healthiest. But I absolutely, every time we talk about it, acknowledge the disparities that exist. Within this picture of great health, we have 8 or 9 zip codes, which tend to be, but not always are, largely minority communities where the health outcomes are significantly worse. And the health department's commitment, and a lot of the awards that we've won is because of some of the programs that we've put in place to try and level the playing field in those disparities. Public health sees social justice as a part of its responsibility. We are dealing with issues that we don't necessarily have an answer to. So for example, for the last 100 years in public health, we've known that maternal mortality, death of women during the time of childbirth, is higher in black women than in non-black women. And here's further interesting information about that. Studies have ruled out socioeconomics and education as factors. So very rich, highly educated black women still die multiple times more often than the average non-black person who's delivering a baby. So why is this? The new science is, the good news is that there's a highlight on it. We're looking at it, we're studying it. There's got to be a component of structural racism And I don't believe that it's intentional most of the time on healthcare providers' part, but that's got to be a part of it, because what else could be an explanation? They've looked at genetics causes. We know genetics plays a part in certain diseases. That's a fact. It doesn't seem to be the case when we're talking about maternal mortality. So that is an example of an issue of social, that's a health issue that has become a social justice concept for us to work on. And I use that as one example. I think it's important that we continue in the county to reach the people who most need services. Some of the awards we've won are because of things that we've implemented, programs we've implemented. And we won a National Model Practice Award we've won 16 National Model and Promising Practice Awards in the last 10 years. The rest of the counties in New York State combined have not won that. So I'm not saying this again to pat myself on the back. I want you to know of these programs that exist. It's not me that's written these applications. It's the great staff that I have, the experts in maternal child health, in environmental health, in water protection, and disease control, disease investigation. When people find out what the health department does, they're really amazed. It's incredible. But, so we had a nurse that realized at one of our WIC sites, our Women, Infant, Children sites, we had a nurse that realized that women were coming during their pregnancy for nutritional support. And very often they would bring along older sibling or 2 or 3. And she noticed that some of the older siblings she didn't think were reaching what they were, milestones they were supposed to be. They looked delayed to her, just in an informal, casual interaction. Well, we started putting early intervention coordinators, screening older siblings at the WIC site. Older siblings that the moms never would have even known that this early intervention entitlement is really meant that every child at an early age is given the free services that they're entitled to help them with speech and occupation and vision and all of the various factors that will lead to better outcomes in life. And so we now make that a routine part of what we do in our WIC program. So that's one of the things that we've implemented that we're very proud of. I do want to just finish, because I know we're short on time and I want to make sure there's time for everybody to speak. One of the great things that has happened also since I was here last time, we talked about access. And this is not a health department thing, but they are our partners. The federally qualified health centers, the Long Island federally qualified health centers, which used to consist of, before they became federally qualified health centers, which is a federal designation that provides increased reimbursement to Medicaid for taking care of Medicaid patients. They have the Elmont Clinic as one of their sites right up the street. When they were just clinics, they were run down, they weren't places you would want to go. Since they become federally qualified health centers, the federally qualified health center under the New Health umbrella has really invested in them. There used to be 5 sites, I believe they're up to 9. They've opened one on the grounds at Belmont. That is a social justice issue. They just, in the last couple of weeks, have started into some schools. They're actually putting federally qualified health centers to do limited amount of services in schools at need. And so as far as access is concerned, to me, the greatest success and the thing that I'm most supporting, and it is not out of the health department, it is out of the federally qualified health centers, is that they expand and bring vital services in a highly professional, culturally competent way to the populations that most need it. And so that's something that I'm going to continue to support. I could talk all day about all the great things and the not so great things that are happening. I'm very upfront about them, but I'm glad to have this opportunity, and I'm always excited to be invited to these discussions, because this is how we really reach. I know what the health department does. I need the community to take advantage of what we have to offer you. So thank you.
On with issues, and hopefully, like I said, these ideas are stimulating some thoughts so that when we get into our dialogue, we'll have rich discussion. I'm going to ask now that Bill Andrews, who is the president of the Long Island Chamber of Commerce, the African American Chamber of Commerce, will give his remarks, and then from that we'll hear from our officers from Community Affairs in the 4th Precinct of Nassau County Police Department.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Sakpase. Shalom. Assalamu alaikum. What I wanted to say is, when hearing all these conversations, it made me think as a child. I read the book that did this book called Stone Soup. Anybody heard that book? Well, you know, we all are that stranger that comes to town and trying to get the town to work together, because he had a formula that nobody else knew. And many of us are like a stranger in a town if we don't work with each other in the community. So my thing is that if you only work with your own group, you disempower yourself. And diversity is a tool for a better society, because like all groups, I think Teresa was telling us about the migration, and it's funny when I said, wow, she must have heard my speech a couple of weeks ago. And they brought me into the Supreme Court of Queens to talk about the black migration. And the two periods were 1916 to 1940, and then 1940 to 1970. And then 7 million African Americans, black Americans from the South came to the North. And part of my talk said that we wanted what all groups want. We came here for a better opportunity to the North. Is that right? And they not only came with their suitcases, but they came with values and principles and hard work. And some people would say, oh, African Americans are lazy. You may have heard that. But they couldn't have been lazy when they worked from sun up to sun can't see. So we have a large history. And some of the things that I've done, I'm also a past president of 100 Black Men. And I would always get this question when I said I was talking to a different ethnic group. They said, how broad is that, 100 Black men? Well, I said, well, actually, it's 10,000 of us, and it's an international organization, and we use that to make a friend by letting you know what our mission is. So we need a doorway to understanding with different cultures. During my time at the 100 Black Men, one of the things that we did is we partnered with other communities, the Jewish Relations Council of Long Island, and we had a health disparity event with the Jews and the African Americans, because they said too, we got some disparities. Other communities said they had disparities. And after that, we developed a relationship. So for my time as president of 100 Black Men for 4 years, we sent one African American or two African Americans every year to the Jewish Relations Council, where we did joint training with every person. But then after that, I left the 100 Black Men. I was term limited like a mom. I don't know what it was turning on people, but what I did after that, I became president of the largest African American Chamber of Commerce. And guess what? I carried on that relationship with the Jewish Relations Council. And to date, we have sent about 6 people to be trained together with Jewish relations. Every ethnic group comes to that training. So sometimes that's what we got to do. We got to come together and have a conversation around working together, because everybody has an issue. Just like minority business development, we have been a leader in the forefront of MWBE utilization. But guess what? We did the first ever regional leadership training conference, and you're gonna really be surprised about this. We had somebody work on a conference with the African American Chamber that was Islamic, and taught us about banking principles of Islam. We had the Dominican Chamber of Commerce. We had other ethnic chambers of commerce. So Long Island, I think, is some things existing, but some things are working better too. We're working together through about 80 chambers across Nassau County. We are the first African American Chamber of Commerce, truly fully African American in Nassau Council chambers, and we are a founding member of the Suffolk County. Because the economy got to work in all these communities, right? Every business needs people to support them. If you got a bakery and you're Jewish, African Americans may buy it, or you buy from our businesses. So I think we have to look at a broader conversation of how we could work together. And I think we need to learn each other, culture. An example of that is I was able to visit the Holocaust Museum during my time at the 100. And I can still tell you, one of the things I learned, that they said they had a word called shalom, and depending on whether you're leaving or going, it means hello or goodbye. And the other thing that we learned, that they have a saying in Judaism, that all learning starts when you hit the spot. And that's what we all want. We want to be to a point where we're inspired and we could learn and we could become all that we could become. So what I'm looking at is there's more similarities in all of us, because we just want to have a good life, and most of us want a better for our children. Did we come like that? Everybody wanted to say, you know what, I want my children to succeed what I succeeded. So I think when we look at diversity, my thing is we definitely, if we only work with ourselves, we disempower ourselves. Because even as an African American chamber, we understand that we may have to combine some of our companies to other ethnic companies to become great. So diversity is a very important thing. And we also got to like, it's ism. That's all it is. Sometimes we have beliefs, but sometimes our beliefs are not true. And we have to examine our beliefs. And the only way to do that is to have a conversation, learn about other cultures' food, learn about their customs and mores, because we all have that. And I think when we do that, we can break down the barriers of racism. And I just want to give you a little bit about one of my mentors. He had a system designed to eliminate racism and elitism and sexism, because anybody can have that, right? So what he said was that when somebody invalidates you, if somebody says, oh, you stupid, you say, I'm smart, I'm intelligent, I'm sensuous, without condition, without reservation, without qualification. So when a human being is invalidated, right, his self-esteem goes down. What happens when you get affirmed? What happens? Anybody? It goes up and down. So now we got a tool. We got a tool that we don't have to check out. And I want to also tell you that just saying hello to a human being could raise their self-esteem. Acknowledgement that we have the power in our tongue to make all of us great and to work together in the world in a way that we never did, because we all live on a planet, and the ecology of things is not just nationally, but here and locally. If we don't take care of the environment, we don't take care of our neighborhoods and our community, because we are in the same neighborhood, right? It's not going to work. So the ecology of things is that we have to work together, and we too can be great. But diversity is a great concept, and we just need to seek understanding and work together in our communities. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Police Officer Gene. A few quick things about me. I grew up in Brooklyn. I moved out to Long Island in the year 2000, and you know, I never expected to be in the position that I am right now. I always wanted to help people, and I figured that law enforcement would be the best angle for me to take. So, given the fact that the light that law enforcement is looked at in today's day, you know, a lot of people would say, nah, that's not for me, you know, but I just decided that I'm going to be the change that I would like to see. So, with that being said, recruitment for minorities in this day and age is very difficult. Our commissioner, Patrick Ryder, he's very passionate in diversifying the Nassau County Police Department. He actually elected an African American police officer, Yolanda Turner, to spearhead the recruitment for minorities. She was a single mother of a 5-year-old daughter at the time she was hired. 20 years later, she's still passionate about giving out to the community. So now, our recruitment. We have a recruitment team that's set out to go into various outlets to encourage minorities to take the test. We go to high schools, malls, churches, basketball games, anything that we could interact with people from our neighborhood, right? So we also seek out women as well to join the police department. You can say that the majority of folks who know about the test, they'll know through the majority that's in the department. The minorities wouldn't have the opportunity because, you know, it's so scarce. So therefore, you know, enthusiasm is at its highest when we're speaking to the young folks, we're talking to the minorities, we're telling them get on board, get on board. And I say this, I speak this because I lived it, you know, and just the fact that I'm up here speaking today is pretty cool. So, let's see, what was I? Where was I? Okay, yeah. Like I said before, the main reason why everybody is uninterested in becoming a police officer is just because social media, the way how everything portrays, you know, the series of events that's been happening, it's something that is discouraging. So what I tell them when I'm speaking to them, and like, you know, when our team is speaking to them, in order to be effective as a police officer, you gotta be able to put people in a place where they can relate with the neighborhood. The people want to see faces, you know, they want to see faces that they're relatable, you know. So that is one thing that I would say that we do as well. A factor that is negative and has its positives is that the fact that most minorities can't afford the fee, the initial fee to take the test.
Yep.
It's a $100 non-refundable fee, and what we do is we try to tell the candidates to save up for the exam, you know, and we also have several waivers in place also. So different type of things that we do just to get the young folks just to, you know, open up their mind a little more as to whatever they see on social media, so that we can bring them in, so we can create that change that you want, so that you can't complain anymore. If you know, don't complain, just come make a difference. Understand? So although the test right now is currently unavailable, we still encourage to pursue law enforcement just to get into any type. So yeah. That's it for me. Now
Thank you. You did a good job. Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Assalamu I'm not going to be as good as he is. It's an honor to be here and discuss with you what the Nassau County Police Department is doing in regards to recruiting minorities to become police officers, such as myself, Officer Jean, and Officer Yolanda, who couldn't make it today due to family emergency. I would like to humbly introduce myself. To those who don't know me, my name is Ahmed Kesba. I'm a Muslim African American, newly assigned to the Community Affairs Unit. I'm currently serving as a police officer for approximately 14 years, 4 of which in Nassau County and 9 in NYPD. Some of the things I did in NYPD is I worked in Brooklyn South, Brooklyn North, and the Intelligence Division. I also got promoted as a sergeant there for 2 years. I'm also eligible to get promoted to sergeant in May of this year, when I have 5 years on the job, which is a big accomplishment for me. What I'm trying to say is this is truly an equal opportunity job for everybody. From a personal perspective, like many other people in our community, I immigrated to the U.S. from Egypt at the young age of 17 years old, and had lived amongst many people from our community, the same community that I had planned on working with hand in hand. I'm married for 10 years. I have been blessed with 2 children, boy and a girl. Aside from being a police officer, I'm a father, brother, son, and just another individual living side by side with everyone else in our great county. Those aren't the only similarity we might share. Perhaps we all would like to feel protected, respected, and heard. In hope of achieving a well-connected, respected, and protected community, Commissioner Ryder assigned me to the Community Affairs Unit. Truly humbled by such a fantastic assignment. I'm even more delighted that I get to come to work every day and work hand in hand with the community I belong to. I'm beyond excited to serve the community that is so dear to my heart, our community and my own community. The core mission of my new role is to understand better what our community needs. I am well positioned in my new role to sit down and listen to how the Nassau County Police Department can better serve our community. It is my primary mission to assure that everyone in this community feels as if their voice counts and their concerns are going to be my concerns. I hope that it can possibly impact our community. I hope to enhance and develop an already existing great relationship between the Nassau County Police Department and our community. Together, we can accomplish this great mission. Just like Officer Yolanda, it was not an easy task to come up with the $100 to sign up for the exam. But I worked hard and saved money to do so. I still remember I took the test 11 years ago. And when I was registering, most of my friends and some of my family members were telling me it's a waste of money, don't do it. There's no way they will hire a Muslim African American, and tried to persuade me to not take the test. But I always say I have to be positive and always do my part and let God do the rest for me. Look at me now, 11 years later, I'm standing here in front of you proudly as a Nassau County police officer. So please get everyone you know to take the test when the opportunity arises. As a matter of fact, Suffolk County Police Department, and I think this is a great opportunity for everybody here and their family. They have an exam in June. Their starting salary is $42,000 and top pay is a little over $111,000. So take advantage of this. You have to be in it to win it. If you have any questions, please feel free to see me after, and I'll give you my contact information. I'll be more than happy to help everybody. Thank you.
It's so important for us to hear from these young officers. I've had a milestone birthday recently, so the way I see age is different, but young officers who are just sharing their narrative. We have to change the narrative, people.
Yes.
You know, and yes, there are some tragedies and some realities to police and community relations, but when you just think about their stories, their journeys, their energy, you know, their enthusiasm, we want to be able to make sure that you feel that the community can embrace you and work with you. And so there's a lot of good things for us to do, but it's just so important to hear personal narratives. I know you came with a mission to talk about Nassau County Police Department and recruitment efforts, but thank you for sharing your personal story, because I think that resonated for us, right?
Yeah.
You know, when we can kind of hear and connect, and I think that's what we need in our communities as well. We have one more speaker. We started just a little after, so hopefully you could still remain with us. We do want to get into some dialogue. But Mr. Stuart Moore, Mr. Moore, who are you? Right in the front? Okay. The founder and the former president of Amistad Black Bar Association here in Long Island is going to be talking with us a little bit about foreclosures and some criminal law issues. So we welcome you at this time.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I apologize that I'm running a little late. However, blessed and thankful that I was able to get here and that our streets are good and clear. And I see many, many people that I've worked with over the past 30 to 40 years. I know that it took a lot for most of you to get out today. I think County Legislator Carrie Solages for putting together such a panel, as well as to offer the opportunity for this to be a teaching moment. We have individuals here such as Elaine Gross, and I'm sorry I didn't hear you today, but I'm well aware of your work in the area of fair housing, as well as Teresa Saunders, who I went to college with back in the day, and her involvement with equity. And we've spoken about that in the past. And I don't know Dr. Newland. Okay, hi. But you talked about community well-being, and then I have my good